Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi appeared on CNN Tuesday night to react to President Biden's State of the Union address when she was asked if the president should run again in 2024 and if he will be primaried. This is what she had to say. Let's watch.
Should Joe Biden be the person leading the party into the future?
Well, last weekend I was at the Democratic National Committee meeting in Philadelphia, and I know that there were some who would say perhaps we should consider somebody new. But even in the 30% poll that you said, like 90% of Democrats would be for Joe Biden if he runs. Sure. What they might hope for in this earlier stages of a campaign and what they have decided they would do are actually two different things. They are for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a person of vision, knowledge, judgment, strategic thinking to get the job done. He was a remarkable 2 years, and again, connects very empathetically with the American people. So I hope he runs. I'm for him if he runs, and I know that the Democrats will fully embrace him. If he runs, it's over.
You don't think there will be any primary challengers to him?
I don't think so.
Dana was talking to AOC earlier today, and she said something, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, to the effect of she appreciates the primary process. I mean, do you think there will be any Democrats who jump in to try to challenge Joe Biden on this generational argument?
No, I don't. I think that you have to weigh all of the equities. Yes, the age issue is something that we all have to contend with in every line of work. But I do think that the fact is, weighing the equities, this is a president, 12 million jobs, all of the things that he has done. He has a record unmatched.
That's fascinating, because she is presented with evidence that most Democrats and the overwhelming majority of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run again. And her response to that is, well, if he does run, most Democrats will still vote for him. So what she's basically saying is there's a difference between what Democrats want, what the people want, and what the people will stomach when I force it down their throat, and I'm okay with that.
It's that meme, the best I can do meme from, do you know that one? I'm not going to explain. I want something. I want something. And there's the best I can do. I want a great Democrat. Best I can do is Biden, or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Sure, I get it.
I think most of what she says in that clip is fine and plausible. She's essentially saying Joe Biden is the best the Democrats have to offer. He has a pretty successful record thus far. She expects
remarkable record. It's been a remarkable 2 years, she says.
The midterm results were remarkable.
They were remarkable insofar as that I have to remark on how we thought they were going to go one way and they went the other way.
Yeah. But what she can't do is rationalize that poll. There's no rationalizing it. It is a poll that clearly states most Democrats would want somewhere. There's no way out of it. She did her best job trying to say, well, that's like in some fantasy world where, I don't know, Barack Obama can run for a third term or something. Maybe that's what she's pretending there.
Yeah, and kudos to Abby Phillip for having some follow-up there. I mean, it is relevant to voters that you have someone so senior in party leadership like Nancy Pelosi basically dismissing the possibility of there being any alternatives to this octogenarian president who is also, despite his age, just not popular on other metrics. He doesn't necessarily speak for the interests of the majority of Americans, and kind of acknowledging that people have acquiesced to the reality of him because they don't want the alternative, because they don't want Donald Trump, whoever it is a kind of telling and rather depressing admission from a democracy standpoint. I wanted to ask what you also think of her saying so confidently that no other Democrats are going to throw their hat in the ring.
I mean, I think that's probably true, to be frank. I think there's a lot more centralized control in the Democratic coalition than the Republican coalition. It's very interesting to compare the two parties right now. The Republican Party is in an ideological civil war with various loud factions that cannot be controlled and despise leadership, will not listen to McConnell, speak out. You saw what they did to Kevin McCarthy there, humiliating him, I think for good reason, to extort actual good procedural changes. You would not see something like that on the Democratic side. Everyone falls in line. I mean, you yourself have, on that specific issue, forced the vote. You didn't get a significant challenge to Nancy Pelosi, but it's broader than that.
Yes.
The Democrats have fallen in line. They are the more orderly party at this point in time. And the Republicans are chaotic, and there's factions, and there's fighting, and like the two main most likely frontrunners for the nomination, like one is openly accusing the other of being a groomer, of trying to date or offer alcohol to underage girls. It's wild to compare the two.
Yeah, I'm not obviously jealous of that level of discourse that's happening
but
on
the
the Republican
dissent,
Party.
you're probably jealous of the dissent.
Generally speaking, the idea
There's
that there
not
are factions,
Democratic dissent.
that there are people, Republicans that are willing to disagree with each other on philosophy and how to move forward, that's important, and that's why I think there's more energy on the Republican side of things. I think it's interesting for Nancy Pelosi to say that. I think it would have been nice to get a follow-up question about what do you think of the fact that Marianne Williamson has said that she has an exploratory committee or whatever it's called looking to run for office. I wonder if Nancy Pelosi would have dismissed her as not a Democrat. It's unclear whether or not Marianne, if she runs, will be running as a Democrat or not. But if she does, I wonder if the Democratic Party is going to actually contend with the idea that there are Democrats who see a path outside of Joe Biden, or if they're going to participate in that same smear that they applied to Bernie Sanders, who is an independent but who caucuses with Democrats, that Bernie isn't a Democrat, so he shouldn't be counted into any.
And Bernie said he's not going to run if Joe Biden runs for re-election.
Right. Much to the chagrin of many a progressive.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's the king right now, and there's not going to be a serious challenge from inside the coalition. But maybe Marianne Williamson doesn't quite count as inside the coalition, but he's unexpectedly, defiantly riding sort of high, or as high as one possibly can, in this very fractured political ecosystem. And again, he's totally despised by Republicans, not well liked by some Democrats, and is like one of the less divisive national political figures in some way.
But was it 72% of folks who viewed the State of the Union had a favorable impression of him and of his speech? So I don't know. Maybe maybe it's mostly Democrats who are watching the Biden State of the Union in the first place. But
you have to give the man some kind of credit, even if I dislike his policies. I don't support them. You dislike a lot of his policies from the other direction. But there's something effective about the guy. It doesn't make sense. He's not particularly well spoken. He's very old. He's not in touch with the current cultural moment, and on and on and on. He's been in politics forever. He's not a trailblazing outsider, and yet he has a stubbornly high base of support. Or he happens to be running against Republicans at a uniquely fractious time for them.
I think that he has that authenticity factor, the same one that Donald Trump had, the same way that Bernie Sanders had, where even if you don't agree with the words coming out of their mouth, you believe that they believe them. A thing that Biden loves to say is, they don't want me to tell you this, they don't like it when I say this, but, and then he inserts some comment about how many biracial people are in commercials or whatever his current frolic and detour is. It's crazy. But that in and of itself tells you he knows what he's not supposed to say. And he's going to say it anyway, because no one puts Biden in a corner. And there's something about that authenticity that people feel like they're getting, he's telling them something true. Like, they're getting what they paid for in Joe Biden. And I think that's reassuring to folks at a time where there's very low political trust. So
I always think of my next door neighbor growing up. She's a much older woman who babysat me when I was a kid, and she passed away during COVID. And she was a lifelong Democrat, Catholic, arch Catholic Democrat. Hated Trump, did not like Republicans, always voted for Democrats, socially moderate, very religious. But then when I would ask her about specific Democrats, she didn't like most of them. She loved Joe Biden. It was her, she passed away, unfortunately, before he was elected. It was her singular ambition to see him elected. And there are a lot of people like her out there, I think, whose voices would not ever be captured or covered in mainstream coverage. So I try to always keep that in mind.
I think that's fair. I think there's also an appetite for different kinds of candidates that the Democratic Party does not put forward, because they put forward a lot of clones, a lot of like Pete clones, or a kind of a Amy Klobuchar / Michael Bennett / all these there were 100 people in the Democratic primary, and most of them were indistinguishable from each other. So what will happen if there's someone like Marianne in the context, if there's a Bernie-style figure in the contest, someone who also has that authenticity factor, but also is willing to pursue populist policies, the likes of which aren't embraced by corporate Democrats like Joe Biden.
Well, we'll have more Rising right after this. Please stay with us.